His dream of becoming an actor began in childhood when he played a tree in a play, and everyone applauded him even though he just stood still. His parents smiled and took pictures while the sound of applause and cheers echoed everywhere. That was the first time he had ever felt that. So after that day, he decided he would pursue a path in acting. But now, in the present, director asks Kim Hyen-soo if that was the best he could do. The young man apologizes and asks for one more chance. But the director yells irritably, asking who brought him to the set. That man complains, saying it was an attitude problem and that tripping was one thing, but what Hyen-soo did was another. He continues his scolding, saying that asking to try again without permission was very arrogant on the actor's part. The young actor could only keep his head down, listening to it all, and that was the result of his attempt. After that, humiliation hunt, so heads to a restaurant to drown his sorrows. Sitting at the table, the young man sizes he has a drink to try and forget what happened earlier. With the makeup still on his face, he wonders if he should have begged the director for another chance. On the other side of the restaurant, a little boy points at him and says, "That man is strange." Hearing the child, the young man turns to look and realizes he's drawing a lot of attention. He then covers his face with his hands upon realizing he had forgotten to take off his clown makeup. That discouraged, the young man starts to question if the problem was his lack of acting talent. We're introduced to Kim Hyen-soo, a 28-year-old aspiring actor, or in other words, unemployed. He graduated with a degree in theater and film, but despite his efforts, no one ever recognized his acting. People didn't praise or criticize him. They just ignored him because his acting was so ordinary. And that's exactly what he was, an ordinary actor with nothing special to make him stand out. He thinks about actors who, even after a long time, were recognized and wonders if he'll ever be like them. Suddenly, he overhears a customer asking another if the guy on TV wasn't a good actor. Hinesu turns and recognizes that the man was from a very famous daily drama. A young woman at the same table is surprised by the question and looks closely at the television. She says she watches the show because of that artist, and a friend praises the man's acting. Seeing their excitement, the young man decides he also wants to be an actor like that. The young man remembers the day of the play and how happy people were with his simple performance. With a look full of determination, he decides what kind of actor he truly wants to become. The young man puts down his drink, understanding that it's not the time to be drowning himself in alcohol. To cheer himself up, he slaps his own face and says he should look at the script one more time. Immediately, the young man gets up from his chair to leave that place. He promises himself that starting tomorrow, he will be a better actor one step at a time. Leaving the restaurant, he is startled by the horn of a truck coming towards him. The world around him seems to shake with the noise of the rapidly approaching vehicle. The young man's expression is one of pure shock and confusion, not understanding what was happening. His last thought is about going home to study while his vision showed another scene. He was now seeing through the eyes of someone else who was running from an out-of-control truck. All of a sudden, the scene changes, and he appears in a dark alley wondering where he is. Suddenly, the young man hears footsteps and sees a woman walking alone down the dark street. The young woman stops walking and hugs herself in fear as she felt a strange presence watching her. Then a strange smile appears on Hyen-soo's face as he lets out a quiet laugh. Controlling the man's body, the young man warns that it's no use going that way because there's no way out. With a frightening smile, he reveals that the path is a dead end for the young woman. While the woman is frozen in fear, the man stares at her from the other side of the alley. Crying, the young woman begs him to spare her and promises to do a good job without charging extra. With an expression of contempt, he asks what she is doing, not understanding anything. The aggressor explains that he just wants to have some fun and doesn't understand why she's acting strangely. The woman apologizes and promises to keep it a secret, but he asks what secret she discovered. Desperate, the young woman begs once more and swears she won't tell anyone what she saw. Ignoring the young woman's pleas, he begins to lash out at her repeatedly, showing no mercy. Next, he picks up a hammer and ironically praises her for discovering his secret. The man says that being too smart isn't good and moves towards her with the tool in his hand. The woman's face fills with terror as she realizes what was about to happen to her. The screen is then filled with a splash of red, hitting at the young woman's tragic outcome. Back in reality, Su's eyes widen in pure shock at what he just saw. The young man wakes up in a hospital bed and a nurse asks if he is conscious. He remembers being hit by a truck and wonders how he can be so okay. The nurse corrects him, saying he wasn't hit but went into shock and hit his head. She explains that he has a concussion and was unconscious for 2 days, and now he needs to rest. The young man reflects on whether he was lucky to only have hit his head, and a memory of his fall appears, and after that, he remembers following that woman to have a little fun. The nurse turns around, confused, asking what he said as she didn't understand. The young man is also confused and wonders what he just said, and the nurse apologizes for not hearing. She then informs him that the professor will arrive soon to see him and leaves the room as he agrees. Su stares into space as the healthcare professional leaves his room. Suddenly, the images from that horrible nightmare return to his mind, frightening him. He puts his hand on his head and thinks that it was a very bizarre and unsettling dream. The young actor then remembers that he was unconscious for 2 whole days in the hospital. Frightened, he repeats out loud that he was out for 2 days, not believing it. Desperate, he starts looking for his phone, and the nurse tells him it's in the locker next to him. As he grabs the device, he sees he has 62 missed calls, sending him into a panic. He then opens his messages and sees that his senior, Kong Jin, is furious about his disappearance. His eyes widen with anger and despair as he reads the messages full of curses. Without wasting time, the young man presses the button to call his senior back. He tries to apologize, but on the other end of the line, the man yells at him furiously. The senior tells him to get to the set, give the performance of his life, and then disappear from the industry. Kong Jin yells that they still haven't found a replacement and tells him to get to the police station set now. The young man thanks him for the opportunity, and the senior asks why he hasn't left yet. Already dressed, he runs out of the room, and the nurse sees him and asks where he's going. Running down the hall, he thinks about the Yandumpo police station set, determined to get there. Reaching the street, the young actor holds out his hand and hails a taxi in a hurry. Inside the taxi, the young man uses the travel time to rest a bit before arriving on set. He then stops and thinks about what his role was, remembering it was murder suspect too. A short time later, the vehicle stops in front of a large building where the filming will take place. Arriving at the location, he finds his senior and Bose apologizing for the huge delay. Kong Jin replies that he doesn't need to apologize as he was the one who ruined his own future. The man then says they should finish the job first and talk about it later. In a waiting room, the young actor sits on a couch and starts reading the script for the scene. The scene is number 34, and the script is very simple to follow and memorize. In it, Detective Jin Yong-mai interrogates the suspect Joan Ho, who is played by Su. The young man realizes the scene is focused on the detective, and he only needs to say 3 short lines. He thinks that if it were just to express wrong emotions, it would be easy, but his role is smaller. The actor knows that in small roles, one's presence must be kept to a minimum so as not to interfere. You have to control your emotion and presence to blend in with the main and supporting actors. Suddenly, a voice announces that scene 304 is about to start filming right now. With a focused gaze, the young man stands up, determined as his turn to act has finally come. The director says that delays happen and tells him not to be nervous so they can get it done in one go. The young man thinks the director just wants to get it over with, and then the countdown to action begins. A clapperboard snaps to indicate that the first take of scene 34 is rolling. The actress begins her dialogue saying he must miss the victim since they were lovers. She continues her taunt, saying it's not the time to be silent and that they're just confirming the facts. The detective says they should skip the parts they both already know to make things easier. She asks what he was doing near the victim's house 2 days ago, and the suspect remains silent. With a smile, the young woman says she's going to show him something very interesting. Next, the investigator places a photo on the table for the young man to see. She comments on the quality of dash cams and says her specialty is field work. The woman then shows a photo of the suspect and asks if it's him in the image. The young man's eyes fill with a strange emotion as he stares at the detective. She continues showing more evidence, like a photo from a mall security camera. The investigator throws more photos on the table, asking why there are so many pictures of him. She then questions why he went so frequently to the place where the victim was. Seeing that he was about to speak, the young woman taunts him, saying he's finally going to open his mouth. Hinasu then recites his first line, saying it wasn't him who did it. Next, he continues his line, stating that he's innocent of all charges. The detective smiles condescendingly and says everyone always says the same thing. But suddenly, the actress' expression changes, and she becomes confused by what she's seeing. Her eyes widen in pure fear and shock at the young man's performance in front of her. In her vision, the actor's face looks like a dark, menacing shadow in the room. Hyen-soo's gaze becomes so intense that the actress is terrified and wonders what's wrong with his eyes. He calls her name and the woman responds nervously. Then he says he is innocent in that moment. The actor continues saying he didn't harm Leah Soo and that he has a good reason for it. With a vacant stare, he says he didn't do it to her because he has no interest in older women. The actress's eyes widen even more at the young man's unexpected and frightening line. Seeing his lead actress's reaction, the director yells to cut the scene immediately. A tense silence falls over the film set as everyone tries to process what just happened. The film crew looks at the actors and the director, not understanding the situation. The director seems thoughtful and a bit shocked by the performance he just witnessed. He then turns to the actor and calls his name with a serious expression on his face. The man asks what he just did, and Hyen-soo snaps back to normal, not understanding. Confused, the young man asks what he did as he didn't realize his performance was so intense. The director tells him to wait in the waiting room and announces a temporary break for everyone. He then calls a camera director, the lead actor, and the one who brought Hyen-soo for a talk. The young actor is even more confused by the order, but obeys and leaves the set. The director gathers the people he called to discuss the young man's surprising performance. The senior who brought Hyen-soo apologizes, but the director asks what kind of actor he is. Kong-jin continues to apologize awkwardly for bringing such a problematic actor. The director tells him to stop apologizing and asks where he was hiding this guy. The senior replies that he's just a college freshman with an average acting level. Surprised by the answer, the director repeats the word average with a tone of disbelief. He then turns to the lead actress and asks what she thought of the young man's performance. The young woman, still shaken by the scene, replies that she's not sure what she felt yet. The director says her silence confirms there was definitely something more to the performance. He reflects that the performance wasn't just different from the script, but had something extra. The man concludes it wasn't just the tone or the dialogue. There was something special there. Analyzing the footage, he suddenly yells for them to stop the recording at a specific point. The others are confused by the director's reaction and don't understand what he saw that was so special. With an excited smile, he says the young man's eyes change completely during the scene. He turns to young Jin and asks if he knows what human eyes look like in the dark. The director explains that it's common sense, but people usually ignore it. Human pupils dilate in the dark to let in more light, and that's a natural instinct. But what surprised him was seeing the actor's pupils dilated even in a well-lit place. And that wasn't all, as the young man didn't move an inch while the actress was speaking. He made no gestures, and his gaze remained fixed on the actress's eyes the entire time. The director concludes excitedly that it was like watching a real psychopathic criminal act. Then the man calls for young Jin because he has a brilliant idea about what to do. He points and says they need to send the recording of that scene to a certain person. The director then takes out his phone and makes a call to producer Yu Jong, sick. On the other end of the line, a busy woman answers the phone while working on her computer. She complains that she's busy, but is surprised when the director mentions a video. The woman's expression quickly changes to one of great curiosity about the call. After receiving the footage, she watches it and is shocked, wondering what it is. Back in the perpetrator's dream, he walks through a dark place without feeling any emotion. The man continues on his way in an elegant suit, but nothing around him excites him. To him, all the dark alleys and empty streets are the same monotonous thing as always. The countless landscapes he sees on his journeys bring him no emotion. The world seems dull and colorless to the criminal who is searching for something more. The only thing that excites him is what awaits him at the end of his boring hunt. He explains that he only needs two things to feel excitement: something sharp and something fragile. The sound of his violent act echoes through the place, and he says he loves to hear it.